I never thought I would be starting a new life at 67. My story is not the kind of story you see on TV. I am an ordinary woman who worked for 42 years as a nurse at Decorah City Hospital and raised a daughter without much help from her husband. Harold was a good man, but he was always away from home, traveling, business trips, overwork. So we lived like that. Me with Fiona, him on his own. Maybe that's why our daughter grew up so weak, always looking for a strong shoulder to lean on. I bought the villa 3 months after Harold's funeral. Heart attack while driving. Doctor said he died instantly. Insurance, savings, the sale of our old apartment, it all allowed me to fulfill a long-held dream. I remember the real estate agent, a young girl with a perfect manicure, looking at me doubtfully. "Are you sure you want a house this big, Mrs. Harrison? There are 3 bedrooms, a guest room, a spacious living room. Won't you be lonely?" I didn't explain to her that a man who'd spent half his life in a cramped 2-room apartment couldn't be afraid of space. After so many years of working in hospital corridors soaked with the smell of antiseptic, I had earned the right to wake up to the birds singing outside my window. The villa was a 15-minute drive from the center of Decorah, a small 2-story house of light brick with a veranda and a garden. The previous owners had left most of the furniture behind, which saved me a lot of money. Harold wouldn't have approved of such a purchase. I could almost hear his voice as I signed the papers, but Harold was gone, and for the first time I could make decisions without looking at anyone. Fiona visited me only once after the move. She came with her husband Hugo in their new SUV. She looked around the house, felt the curtains, picked at the paint on the windowsill with her fingernail, and pressed her lips together. "Mom, are you sure you can handle this? There's so much work to do here. And it's so far from the city. What if you need help?" Hugo was pacing the living room as if calculating its value. He was tall, with a barely noticeable paunch that he carefully tucked in, and his hair was carefully styled with streaks of graying. His smile never reached his eyes. Cold, assessing. "It's a great buy, Thelma. Real estate is always a worthwhile investment." He patted my shoulder like a little girl. "If you need anything, we're always here to help. Right, Fiona?" I didn't pay much attention to what he said. The kids came, sat for a couple hours, and left, leaving behind empty cups and a sense of unfinished conversation. I quickly got used to the new rhythm of life. In the morning, coffee on the veranda, then work in the garden in the afternoon, reading or a trip to the city. Sometimes I met Florence, an old friend of mine with whom we had worked together at the hospital. We drank tea, discussed city news, and complained about arthritis. "You've changed, Thelma," Florence said during one of these meetings. "Calmer, more confident. This house has obviously done you good." I didn't tell her that sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night to the sound of my own voice, dreaming that I'm talking to Harold. Or that sometimes when I came back from a walk, I'd stop on the doorstep, wondering if the lock on the front door had clicked. Loneliness has its own weight. It takes some getting used to, learning to carry it around like an old coat. The call from Fiona came on a Tuesday evening in early October. I was just watering the flowers on the veranda when the phone in my apron pocket vibrated. "Mom, are you sitting down?" Her voice sounded strained, with that intonation she had when she was about to announce something unpleasant. A broken knee, a D in math, a decision to drop out of college. It all started with the same phrase. "What's wrong, Fiona?" I sat down in the wicker chair. Some financial difficulties," she said carefully. "Hugo lost his job. Those idiots at the company didn't appreciate his initiative, can you imagine? After 11 years of service. And then the landlord raised the rent." I kept quiet, letting her talk. Fiona never called for no reason. There was always some reason, some request. Anyway, I was thinking, maybe you'd let me stay with you for a while. Just for a little while until Hugo finds a new job. A month and a half tops, I promise. My insides were tight. I loved my daughter, but the thought of sharing the space I was used to was unsettling. On the other hand, Fiona needed me for the first time in a long time. "Of course, darling. You know you can always count on me." "You're the best, Mom. We'll be quiet, I promise. And I'll help you with the house, the garden, whatever you say." I frowned. "We? Hugo's moving in too?" The pause on the other end of the line was long enough for me to realize I was hooked. Of course you are, Mom. We're family. I can't leave him alone. Besides, the kids want to see Grandma too. They've grown so much since last time. The kids, Tristan and Nora, my grandchildren who I only saw once a year at Christmas. Tristan was graduating from high school this year. Nora was a couple years younger, a quiet girl with eyes that looked away from the person she was talking to. Fiona, I'm not sure this is a good idea. I've only got 3 bedrooms and. But you said yourself the house is too big for you alone. It's perfect. You won't be alone, and we'll save on rent. Besides, it's only temporary. I closed my eyes. Nothing is more permanent than a temporary solution. But how could I say no to my own daughter? Okay, but only temporarily until Hugo finds a job. Thank you, Mommy. We'll be there this Friday, okay? Do you want me to bring you anything from town? I asked her to buy milk and bread, even though the fridge was full, just so I wouldn't feel helpless in the face of this intrusion into my life. After the conversation, I sat on the veranda for a long time, looking at the sunset. A strange feeling was brewing inside me, a mixture of anxiety and childlike excitement for change. Maybe it was for the best? The house was too quiet. Perhaps the presence of my daughter's family would liven up the walls. I prepared for their arrival thoroughly. I scrubbed the floors, did the laundry, prepared the bedrooms, the best one for Fiona and Hugo, the one next door for Tristan, and a small room for Nora. Baked apple pie, bought a week's worth of groceries, even put a vase of asters from the garden in their room. They arrived Friday afternoon. First, I heard the rumble of a powerful engine, then the crunch of gravel. I stepped out onto the porch and froze. Hugo's car was followed by a small moving truck. Something inside me shivered. I stood clutching the railing and watched Hugo get out of the SUV, wearing an expensive coat and a cocky smile. Fiona followed, nervous, her eyes running. Teenagers slipped out of the back doors. A tall boy who looked like his father in posture, and a skinny girl staring at her phone. Mommy! Fiona rushed over to me and hugged me. She smelled of perfume and cigarettes. You look amazing! That tan looks great on you. Hugo, meanwhile, was unloading the suitcases, big, expensive ones. The truck driver got out too, waiting for instructions. What's this? I nodded at the truck. Oh, that. Fiona laughed nervously. You see, we decided not to pay for furniture storage. It's so expensive, and you have so much space. You brought the furniture, but the house is fully furnished. Thelma, darling. Hugo came up on the porch and hugged me with a familiarity that made me cringe. You didn't think we'd leave everything behind, did you? Don't worry, we'll find a place to put it. Guys, say hello to Grandma. Tristan nodded reluctantly. Hi, Grandma. Nora looked up from the phone. Hello, Grandma. Something resembling an apology flashed in her gaze. Well, let's not waste any time. Hugo clapped his hands together. We need to unload the car before dark. Thelma, where are our rooms? I want to check where to put our bed. Without waiting for an answer, he strode into the house, throwing his coat on a chair in the hallway. Fiona followed him, whispering to me, I'm sorry, he's stressed about the move. You know, men, I didn't know what to say. My mouth was dry and my temples throbbed with pain. For the next 2 hours, my house became a warehouse. The movers were hauling furniture, boxes, packages. Hugo was in charge, not interested in my opinion. He'd already looked around the house, and he ruled as if he owned it. Thelma, that bedroom on the second floor, the one overlooking the garden, that's ours, he said. It's a good view, and the sun doesn't beat down on the windows. Tristan would take the one next door, and Nora would take that little room at the end of the corridor. They were the rooms I prepared, but I was struck by the cavalier way in which he announced it, not by asking, but by the fact. And those old dressers will have to go, he continued, looking around the living room. Our closet is much more functional. By the way, those curtains look like they haven't been changed since last century. Fiona, darling, don't forget to order new ones. I stood in the middle of my own living room, the one that was no longer mine, and I felt like a ghost unseen, unheard. Hugo, I said at last, I understand that you need to put things away, but maybe we could talk about where we're going to put things first. This is my house, after all. He turned around with that condescending smile I knew well, the smile of a man talking to a child. Of course, Thelma, of course. but you have to admit we're better at design. Besides, you want your grandchildren to be comfortable, don't you? But I thought you were here for a month and a half. I looked at Fiona, who was avoiding my gaze. Well, you know how it is. Hugo shrugged. Finding a job can take a long time, especially when you're looking for something worthwhile in a management position. At that moment, the loader brought in a massive leather chair, Hugo's favorite. Here, put it here in the center. Hugo pointed to the spot near the fireplace where my wicker chair, the one I like to sit in with a book, stood. Put this one somewhere else, maybe the garage. The trucker pushed my chair out of the way and put the leather monster in its place. All right, Hugo plopped into the chair. Now it looked more like a house. Thelma, do you have anything to drink? After a day like this, I need a good whiskey. I opened my mouth, but the words stuck in my throat. Tristan showed up with a hamster cage. Dad, where should I put Buster? My room has some stupid old furniture. No room for a cage. Thelma will take care of it, Hugo said. Won't you, Thelma? You'll help your grandson get settled in, won't you? I looked at the man who had settled into my house as comfortably as if he'd always lived here, and I realized I'd made a terrible mistake. But it was too late. The guests had arrived, and judging by the number of things they had packed, they weren't planning to leave. Of course, I heard my voice as if from outside. I'll show you around and help you. Hugo nodded and turned to Fiona. Darling, can you find some whiskey for your tired husband? And see what Thelma has for dinner. After a day like this, I'm starving. November was surprisingly warm. The leaves in the garden had fallen, but the ground was still frozen, and I went out every morning with a rake to clear away the fallen leaves. It had become my ritual, a way of escaping from what my house had become over the past month. That morning, I got up earlier than usual. The clock read 6:30 as I quietly made my way down to the kitchen. I love this time of day when the house is still asleep and you can enjoy the quiet, drink coffee alone, just think. But on the kitchen table was a mountain of unwashed dishes from the evening. No one had thought to load the dishwasher. The wrappers from the chips and crackers Tristan liked to snack on before bedtime were lying around. On the stove, a pot of leftover gravy dried with a crusty crust. I sighed and set about cleaning it up. By the time the kettle boiled, the kitchen was sparkling clean, but my solitude didn't last long. Thelma, are you up yet? Great. Hugo appeared on the doorstep in the silk robe Fiona had given him last Christmas. Can you make me a coffee? I'm meeting a potential employer today. I need to be in shape. He sat down at the table, unfolding some kind of business article on his tablet. Didn't wait for my answer, didn't look in my direction. He simply gave an order, confident that it would be obeyed. And I obeyed. I silently took out his favorite mug, a large one with the word boss on it, and poured 2 spoonfuls of ground coffee into the pot. Hugo liked it strong, with cinnamon. How did you remember I like cinnamon? He asked the first week of their stay, and I didn't know what to say. Not to say that memorizing the preferences of loved ones is part of my nature, developed through years of marriage to Harold and motherhood. Eggs and bacon, please. He was still staring at the screen. And don't overcook the toast this time. When exactly did I become their cook? It happened so quietly, so naturally, that I couldn't even remember the moment of transition. I think it was on the 3rd day when Fiona asked at dinner, Mom, you don't mind making breakfast tomorrow, do you? Hugo and I want to sleep in a little longer. And I said yes. And then somehow breakfast turned into lunches and dinners. You're such a good cook, Thelma. Besides, while Hugo's looking for a job and I'm at the checkout counter at the supermarket, you have more free time. Hugo had been to 3 job interviews in the last month. Each time he came back dissatisfied. The salary was not high enough. The office was too far from home. The bosses were totally incompetent. You have no idea, Thelma, he complained, reclining in his chair after another interview. What idiots are now running companies? No strategic thinking, no understanding of the market. I offer them revolutionary ideas and they look like sheep at a new gate. I nodded silently as I continued knitting. My living room no longer belonged to me. It was now home to Hugo's huge TV, which blared sports until late at night. My bookshelves were squeezed to make room for Fiona's collection of figurines, gaudy porcelain figurines she'd bought on sale. And my favorite chair remained standing in the corner, pushed back by my brother-in-law's massive leather monstrosity. Thelma, are you listening to me? Hugo pulled me out of my reverie. I said, make eggs and bacon. Sure, I pulled out a skillet. Do you want the bacon crispy or the usual? The usual. He sipped his coffee. And hurry up. I have to leave in 40 minutes. When breakfast was ready, a sleepy Fiona appeared in the kitchen. She reminded me more and more of my teenage self every day. Always disheveled, her face puffy from sleep, her pajamas baggy. Good morning, she murmured, reaching for her coffee. Good morning, dear. I kissed her cheek. No matter what, she was still my girl. Do you want me to make you breakfast? No, she shook her head. I have to be at work by 9, so I'll have time to eat. Fiona had gotten a job as a cashier at the local supermarket a week after they'd moved in. Temporary, of course, she explained, until Hugo finds something worthwhile. She worked 4 days a week, 9 to 5, coming home tired and irritable. Honey, could you pick up the kids from school today? Hugo blotted his lips with a napkin. My appointment might take a while, and Fiona has a shift until tonight. Sure, I answered automatically, though I had other plans for today. Florence had invited me to an exhibition of local artists. We agreed to meet at 2 o'clock at the City Gallery. But the children, of course, are more important. Great. Hugo got up from the table, leaving the dirty dishes behind. Tristan finishes at 3, Nora at 4:30. And don't forget, Tristan has basketball practice today at 5. He needs a ride to the gym. But I don't have a car, I reminded him. After Harold died, I sold our old Toyota. I didn't see the point in keeping a car when Decorah had great bus service. You can have mine. He tossed the keys carelessly on the table. Just be careful with the parking. You haven't driven in a while. I wanted to argue that I was perfectly capable of driving and parking, but Hugo was already out of the kitchen, buttoning his shirt as he went. Fiona gave him a loving look, like a proud mother seeing her son off to first grade. He's so determined, she sighed as the door closed behind Hugo. He doesn't take the first job he can get, looking for something truly worthy of his talents. I remained silent, busying myself with the dishes. What could I say? That their temporary stay was dragging on? That my house was no longer mine? That I had become a housekeeper and a babysitter? Fiona, I finally decided. We need to talk. About what, Mom? She was staring at her phone, watching the morning news. If it's about the new curtains for the living room, I've already ordered them. They should be here next week. Not about the curtains. I sat down across from her. About how our life together was going. She gave me a puzzled look. What's wrong? I think it's great. The kids are excited about the new school. You're not alone. We're saving money on rent. It's a win-win. Fiona. I tried to keep my voice down. When you moved in, it was a temporary solution. It's been a month now, and Hugo doesn't seem to be actively looking for work. Don't get me started, she wrinkled her nose. He refuses offers that are beneath his qualifications. That's the right thing to do. Why squander it on trivialities? It's not just the job. I chose my words carefully. I think you're, a little too comfortable. I'm happy to help with the kids from time to time, but right now it's like I'm always on the job. Cooking, cleaning, picking up the kids from school. So it's a burden for you to help your own daughter? Her voice turned cold. You always said you missed when the house was full of life. Now it's full and you don't like it again? It's not that, and you know it. I felt myself getting angry. I just want us to respect each other's boundaries. I want you to treat this house as my home, where you're temporarily staying, not as your property. Fiona snorted. Mom, you're exaggerating. We just live like a normal family, helping each other. We share responsibilities. What responsibilities does Hugo share? I asked her quietly. She flared up. He's the head of the family. He handles the finances, looking for a job to provide for us all. It's not as easy as you think. And my pension and the savings that go to support you all, that's what? You're berating us with money? Fiona jumped up, knocking over the cup. The coffee spilled across the table. Oh, great. So we're a burden to you. Why don't we just move out? I didn't say that. I rubbed my temples tiredly. It was a familiar scene. Fiona was always a master at turning a conversation about her mistakes into an accusation against me. I just want us to agree on rules. Like who cooks when, who picks up the kids from school. Rules? She snorted. You want to make a schedule for your own family? How about penalties for being late for dinner? The phone rang, interrupting our conversation. Fiona grabbed the receiver and looked at the screen. It's Hugo, she said, instantly changing her tone to honeyed. Yes, darling? No, I haven't forgotten anything. Really? That's great. Of course we'll celebrate. When she finished talking, she was radiant. Hugo had been offered a job. Right now, on the phone, managing director of a construction company. He's on his way to sign the contract. That's great, I tried to smile. That means you'll be able to rent again soon. Fiona's smile faded. Mom, are you serious? Are you kicking us out? No, but you're moving in temporarily until Hugo finds a job. He has now. But why would we move out? She waved her hands in the air. There's plenty of room for everyone. The kids love it. You're not lonely. We're saving money. I realized this conversation was useless. Fiona couldn't hear me. She didn't want to hear me. Okay, I backed off. We'll talk about this later. You should get to work. She brightened, kissed me on the cheek, and rushed off to get dressed, leaving me to wipe up the spilled coffee. After Fiona left, I called Florence and canceled our meeting. My friend couldn't hide her disappointment. Thelma, this is the third time this month you've canceled our plans. She sounded hurt. What's going on? It's a family emergency. I didn't go into detail. You're letting them take advantage of you. Florence was always blunt. Last time I saw you, you looked exhausted. It's not normal. You have to set boundaries. I tried today. I sighed. It didn't work. Thelma, her voice became serious. You lost yourself after Harold died. Then you found it when you bought this house. And now you're losing it again, letting your daughter and son-in-law boss you around. You deserve better than that. After talking to Florence, I went upstairs to make the beds. Tristan's room was chaotic as usual. Clothes strewn about, empty soda cans on the table, chip crumbs on the bedspread. He'd been considered a bright student in school, but at home he acted like a spoiled brat. I began to clean up, cringing at the smell of unwashed socks and deodorant that my 17-year-old grandson liberally spritzed on himself every morning. The door to Nora's room was ajar. Unlike her brother, her 15-year-old granddaughter kept her room in perfect order. The bed was neatly made, the books on the shelf were arranged according to size, and there wasn't a speck of dust on the table. On the wall were drawings made by her hand. Nora was good at drawing, though she never bragged about it. Unlike the boisterous Tristan, she was quiet, inconspicuous, like a shadow. Fiona often complained that she didn't understand her younger daughter. Just like you, she told me. Just as secretive. As I finished cleaning and went downstairs. I still had to make lunch for the kids to eat after school, and then I had to take Tristan to practice. It was going to be a long day. The school bell rang at 3 sharp. I waited for Tristan at the gate, glancing nervously at my watch. My grandson showed up surrounded by his friends, all tall, athletic guys. When he saw me, he grimaced. Are you in a car? He asked instead of greeting me. Yeah, your dad lent me his. I nodded at the parked SUV. Cool. One of Tristan's friends whistled. Your grandmother drives a car like that? It's my dad's, Tristan muttered. Okay, guys, I'll see you at practice. He plopped down in the front seat, pulling out his cell phone. I started the engine. How was your day at school? I asked, pulling out of the parking lot. It was fine. He kept his eyes on the screen. Did you have homework? Uh-huh. Do you need help with them? No. The conversation wasn't working. I gave up and turned on the radio. Tristan immediately changed the station to some loud music with ear-splitting bass. Nora was waiting outside her school, sitting on a bench with a book. When she saw the car, she gathered her things and walked over. Hi, Grandma. She sat in the back seat. Thanks for picking me up. How's school going? I caught her gaze in the rearview mirror. Good, she smiled. Today in art class, we were allowed to paint in any technique. I did a watercolor landscape. Will you show it to me later? Sure, she nodded. Could we keep the music down? Nora asked her brother. I have a headache. Don't make things up, Tristan snapped, turning up the volume. If it hurts, take a pill. Tristan, please. I tried to intervene. Your sister isn't feeling well. She always feels bad, he snorted. What a sissy. I wanted to object, but decided not to add to the conflict. At home, I gave Nora a pill for her headache and sent her to her room to rest. Thank you, Grandma, she smiled gratefully. Don't pay any attention to Tristan. He's just trying to be cool like Daddy. There was no judgment in those words, just a simple statement of fact. Nora, despite her young age, was observant and sensitive. It's okay, sweetie, I stroked her head. Just rest. I'll call you when dinner is ready. Tristan, meanwhile, was sprawled out on the living room couch with the TV on full volume. A basketball game, just like his father. Tristan, you need to do your homework before practice, I reminded him. I'll do it later. He waved it off. Grandma, bring some chips, would you? They're in the pantry on the second shelf. I froze. My grandson didn't even look in my direction, completely sure that his request order would be fulfilled, just like his father had this morning. Tristan, I tried to speak calmly. If you want chips, they're actually in the pantry, on the second shelf. He pulled away from the screen and looked at me with a puzzled expression. Didn't you hear that? I asked him to bring them over. I heard. I nodded. I told him where they were. You can get them yourself. There was a look of genuine incomprehension on his face. But you're going into the kitchen to make dinner anyway. It doesn't matter. I crossed my arms across my chest. I'm not your maid, Tristan. I'm your grandmother. And I would appreciate it if you would treat me with respect. He rolled his eyes and snorted, but got up from the couch. He walked to the kitchen, stomping loudly, showing his displeasure. He came back with a bag of chips, tossing them to me. Dad says old people like to be coddled. I thought you might enjoy it. I remained silent even though I was seething inside. Old people. In my grandson's mouth, it sounded like an insult. To him, I was not a person, but a category, an old woman, a grandmother, a second-class creature created to serve real people like him and his father. After lunch, I drove Tristan to practice and then came home. Nora was sitting in the kitchen doing homework. Are you feeling better? I asked, taking off my coat. Yes, thank you. She looked up from her notebook. Grandma, can I help you with dinner? Sure, I smiled. What are we cooking? Dad asked for lasagna. She grimaced. But if you're tired, you can just reheat last night's stew. Your father will get his lasagna. I pulled out my apron. Will you help me with the sauce? We cooked together, and it felt good. Nora talked about school, about her new friends, about the book she was reading. In those moments, I felt like a real grandmother, not a maid. You know, she said, stirring the sauce, I'd like to apologize. For what, dear? For the way Daddy and Tristan treat you. She didn't look at me, concentrating on the pot. It's not right. This is your home and they're acting like you're a guest. I didn't know what to say. I had a lump in my throat. It's not your fault they're acting like this, Nora. I know, she nodded. But I'm still ashamed. Mom, too. She wasn't always like this. She used to laugh a lot, argue with Dad. Now she just agrees with everything he says. The wisdom of that 15-year-old girl amazed me. She saw things that the adults around her didn't. Your mom loves your dad, I said gently. Sometimes love makes us turn a blind eye to certain things. That's not love, Nora shook her head. It's fear. Mom is afraid of him. Not that he'll hit her or anything like that. She's afraid that he'll be disappointed in her, that he'll leave. And she's doing everything she can to make sure that doesn't happen. I was silent, digesting her words. Perhaps my granddaughter was right. Fiona had always sought approval first from me and Harold, then from her teachers, and now from her husband. Fear of being rejected, of being unwanted, was what drove her. Grandmother, Nora looked at me seriously. You're not going to kick us out, are you? I know we're a bother to you, but I like it here. In our old apartment, there was always scandals, yelling. It's peaceful here. I put my arms around her, pulling her close to me. Of course not, darling. You're my family. This house is always open to you. She smiled in relief, and I realized I couldn't kick them out even if I wanted to. I couldn't deprive this girl of the refuge she had finally found. In the evening, Fiona and Hugo returned. He was glowing with pride. The contract had been signed, the job had been obtained. The salary, he said, was beyond expectations. "We should celebrate," he announced, taking a bottle of expensive whiskey out of the bag. "Thelma, make something special for dinner and get some crystal glasses. Tonight we're celebrating." I silently went to the kitchen where the lasagna was ready. Nora helped me set the table and set the utensils. Fiona, instead of joining us, went to shower and change for the party. At dinner, Hugo was the center of attention. He talked about his new position, his prospects, his plans. "The first thing I need to do is to update my closet," he said as he served himself a second portion of lasagna. "The manager should look accordingly, and I'll look for a new car, as this one has already served its purpose." "But when can we get an apartment again?" I asked cautiously. Hugo froze with his fork at his mouth. Fiona tensed. "Why?" He looked genuinely surprised. "We're fine here, right, Fiona?" "Of course, dear." She nodded hurriedly. "Besides, Mommy's all alone. She needs help with such a big house." "But we agreed that you would stay with me temporarily until Hugo found a job." I tried to speak calmly. Thelma. Hugo shook his head with that condescending smile I hated so much. "You wouldn't kick out your own daughter and grandchildren, would you? We're all good together. One big happy family." I looked at Fiona for support, but she averted her eyes. Then at Tristan, who was completely absorbed in his phone. And finally at Nora, the only one who looked at me with understanding and sympathy. "Of course not," I answered quietly. "I won't kick you out." "Good!" Hugo clapped his hands together. "Thelma, you won't regret it. We'll take good care of you. Won't we, children?" Tristan mumbled something, not looking away from the screen. Nora nodded, looking me straight in the eye. "Yes, Daddy," she said firmly. "We're going to take care of Grandma, just like she takes care of us." December was unusually cold. The snow came early, covering my garden with a white blanket. I used to love winter evenings. Silence, a book, hot tea by the fireplace. Now there was always noise in the house. Tristan and his friends were playing video games that made the windows shake. Hugo was talking loudly on the phone, discussing work matters. Even Fiona, previously quiet, was now playing music in the kitchen while cooking dinner, a rare occasion when she cooked anything at all. I've learned to appreciate moments of solitude. So when I woke up before everyone else that Sunday morning, I decided to enjoy the silence. I went down to the kitchen, made tea, and settled down with a book in a small room near the veranda, Harold's former study, which had miraculously escaped Hugo's renovation. Perhaps because it was too small and uncomfortable for his majestic person, I didn't hear him come downstairs. His voice coming from the next room took me by surprise. "Yes, Mark, I realize this is serious," Hugo said softly, obviously trying not to wake the house. "But I've got it under control." I froze, cup in hand. It wasn't that I was eavesdropping, but the door to the study was ajar, and Hugo was pacing the veranda, unaware of my presence. "Of course I know about the statute of limitations," he said, irritation in his voice. 3 years for financial fraud. But they can't prove anything. All the documents have been destroyed, and Jenkins is too cowardly to testify." I held my breath. "Fraud? Documents? What is he talking about?" "No, going back is out of the question," Hugo continued. "I found the perfect place. Quiet town, no one asks questions. Besides, my mother-in-law owns a nice house, and I've almost convinced her to sign it over to Fiona." The cup trembled in my hands. "So that's what he's up to take over my house." I strained my ears, afraid I'd miss a word. "The old woman's alone, no children besides Fiona." Hugo chuckled. I'd already probed the ground. "She's the kind of woman who'd give up everything for her family. Classic victim of manipulation. Couple months and we'll have the house." "Old lady. Victim." Every word was like a slap in the face. I always knew Hugo wasn't the nicest person, but I didn't realize how calculating and cynical he was. "Yeah, the new job is just a cover." His voice was even quieter, and I had to strain to hear him. "The pay is ridiculous, but at least it's legal. You have to give the appearance of prosperity. In 6 months, when things settle down, we can think about something more serious." I set the cup down carefully on the table, afraid to make a noise to reveal my presence. My insides were seething with anger and resentment, but I forced myself to sit still. Okay, Mark, I have to go. The homies will be up soon. Hugo yawned. Keep me posted, and don't call this number unless it's absolutely necessary. I'll call you back from another phone. I heard him end the call and go into the kitchen. The sound of the refrigerator opening, the hiss of soda. Hugo liked to start the day with a can of Coke. After waiting a few minutes, I quietly slipped out of the study and went up to my bedroom, trying not to squeak on the steps. Closing the door, I sank to the edge of the bed, trying to make sense of what I'd heard. Hugo hadn't just lost his job, he was involved in some kind of fraud. They hadn't moved in with me because of financial difficulties, but because they were hiding. And now he was planning to take over my house. My first impulse was to kick them all out immediately. But on second thought, I realized that wasn't an option. Fiona wouldn't believe me if I just told her what I'd heard. She's completely under her husband's influence. She'll accuse me of lying or misunderstanding. And the children. Tristan will side with their father, but Nora, what will happen to Nora if I destroy their family? No, we have to do things differently. Gather evidence. Find out exactly what Hugo's involved in. And then make a decision. At breakfast, I tried to behave as usual, though every time Hugo asked me to do something else, my insides clenched with revulsion. Now that I knew how he really felt about me, I could see the falseness in every smile, every please and thank you. Thelma, could you iron my shirt for tomorrow's meeting? He handed me a spotless white shirt. The one with the cufflinks. And the jacket too, please. Of course, Hugo. I forced myself to smile as I accepted the clothes. They'll be ready for tonight. You're a miracle, Thelma. He patted me on the shoulder like a dog that had done the trick. I don't know what we'd do without you. Paying for dry cleaning, I thought, but kept my mouth shut. Nora, sitting across from me, watched me carefully. That girl was too perceptive for her age. Sometimes I thought she saw more than she said. After breakfast, when Hugo had gone to work, Fiona had gone shopping, and Tristan had gone to a friend's house, Nora and I were home alone. She helped me with the cleaning, silently dusting the shelves while I vacuumed. Grandma, she suddenly said as I turned off the vacuum, is something wrong? I froze, surprised by her question. Why would you think that? You were looking at Daddy weird at breakfast. She put the vase she was wiping down back on the shelf. Like she'd seen something new. Something unpleasant. I hesitated. Nora was just a kid. I shouldn't have dragged her into adult problems. But at the same time, she was the only person in this house I could trust. Nora, I walked over to her and held her hands. Tell me honestly, your father, did he ever do anything wrong? She didn't look away, but I noticed her shoulders tense. What do you mean? At my last job, did you hear anything about why he lost it? Nora lowered her eyes. She and Mom said he wasn't appreciated, that the bosses were jealous of his success. Do you believe that yourself? She was silent for so long that I thought I wasn't going to get an answer. But then she raised her head and looked at me seriously. No, I heard them fighting. Mom was screaming that he'd ruined everything with his greed, that now they'd have to start from scratch. And Dad said she didn't understand anything, that it was a brilliant scheme. Just someone had blown the whistle. My heart sank. So Fiona knew. She knew, and she was covering for her husband. Thank you for telling me, darling. I squeezed her hand. It'll stay between us. Are you going to do something about it? There was concern in her voice. I don't know. I need more information for now. Nora nodded as if she'd made up her mind. I can help. Sometimes Dad leaves his work laptop at home. I've seen him hide the flash drive in his desk drawer under some papers. Nora, I shook my head. I can't ask you to spy on Dad. It's not right. And what he's doing to you is right? A light of indignation flickered in her eyes. Grandma, I'm not stupid. I see what's going on. He's using you. He's using all of us. I didn't know what to say. The wisdom of this 15-year-old girl amazed me. Let's just wait and see, I suggested. Don't do anything that might jeopardize you. She nodded, but I could see that the conversation wasn't over. Nora had inherited my stubbornness. When she made up her mind about something, it was hard to change her mind. That same day, I called Florence. I needed advice, and she always had a practical mind and the ability to see a way out of seemingly hopeless situations. Thelma? I was glad to see her. Finally, I thought you'd forgotten I existed. I'm sorry, I sighed. It's been a lot on my mind. Family stuff? There was a touch of irony in her voice. How are your dear relatives doing? Florence, I need your help. I didn't beat around the bush. Do you remember Harry Weston? The lawyer, of course I do. He handled my divorce case. Why? Is he still practicing? As far as I know, yes. Thelma, what's going on? I hesitated. The phone line didn't seem reliable enough for a conversation like this. Let's meet. Tonight at 3 at Joseph's Cafe? I'll be waiting, Florence said seriously, realizing the importance of the moment. Joseph's Cafe was on the outskirts of Decorah, far enough from Hugo's new job and Fiona's roots. A small, cozy place that served the best blueberry pie in town. Florence and I sometimes met there when we wanted to talk without interruptions. I arrived early, chose a table in the corner, away from the windows, and ordered tea. Florence showed up at 3, punctual as always. She sat down across from me, scrutinizing my face. Tell me, she said without preamble. What has your son-in-law done? I told her everything, the conversation I'd overheard, Hugo's plans for my house, the shenanigans at my old job. She listened without interrupting, but frowned harder. Bastard, she summarized when I was done. I always knew there was something wrong with him. Too cloying, too self-righteous, never to be trusted. What am I going to do, Florence? I clasped my hands around the cup of cold tea. If I just kick them out, Fiona won't forgive me, and if I leave things the way they are. You risk losing the house, she finished for me. Thelma, you need proof. Something concrete that will confirm your suspicions. You can't just act on what you overhear. That's why I asked about Harry Weston, I nodded. I think I need legal advice. That's a good idea, Florence agreed. Harry can advise you on how to protect your property, but that's not enough. We need to find out exactly what Hugo did in his old job. How? I don't even know where he worked. Fiona never talked about it specifically, only that it was a big company. Florence hesitated, tapping her fingernail on the table. What about social media? It's all there now. He probably has a LinkedIn or Facebook profile. There's got to be information about his previous employment. You know I'm not good with that stuff, I shook my head. But I am. She pulled a clipboard out of her bag. What's his full name? Hugo Newman. Florence typed something quickly, then scrolled down the page, staring intently at the screen. Now let's see. Hugo Newman, 45 years old, Decorah. Oh, I found it. Before moving here, he worked at Tyson Investments in Portland. He was a middle manager. Interesting. What? There's no peer references in his profile. Usually people ask former coworkers to write a few nice words. Nothing here. It's like he wants his work there to be forgotten. That confirmed my suspicions. Something had happened at Tyson Investments, something Hugo preferred not to talk about. And another thing, Florence continued. Look at the dates. He quit in September and you moved in October. There was only a month between those events. It doesn't look like he was actively looking for work before he landed at your place. What am I supposed to do? I repeated. For starters, talk to Harry. Make sure your house is secure. Then look into Tyson Investments. Maybe there's been some kind of scandal there. Check the local Portland news for September-October. I nodded, feeling hope for the first time in a long time. There was a plan. Not the most detailed, but at least a direction. Thank you, Florence. I squeezed my friend's hand. I don't know what I'd do without you. The same thing I always do, she smiled. I'd be on my own. You're stronger than you think, Thelma. When I got home, I found Nora at the computer in the living room. She was concentrating on typing something, but when she saw me, she quickly closed the lid of the laptop. Grandma, she smiled, but I could see the worry in her eyes. Are you back already? How was the walk? Good. I hung my coat on the coat rack. Where's everybody? Mom's at work, Dad too. Tristan's at a friend's house studying for some test. It was just the two of us in the house, and I could see that Nora wanted to say something, but she hesitated. Grandma, she finally decided, I found something in Daddy's computer. My heart skipped a beat. Nora, I asked you to. I know. She lowered her head. But I couldn't just sit there and do nothing. You have no idea what it's like to live in a family where everything is built on lies. I sank down next to her on the couch. What did you find? She opened her laptop and showed me a page from the local Portland newspaper. The article was dated September 20th. The headline read, Scandal at Tyson Investments. Employee accused of embezzling client funds. No name, Nora said quietly. They say only that it was a manager responsible for the accounts of several large clients. He created a fictitious company and transferred part of the investments there, ostensibly to diversify his portfolio. In reality, the money was going into his pocket. I read the article and every word confirmed my worst fears. The scheme was uncovered when one of the clients suspected something was amiss and demanded a full statement of funds flow. The company conducted an internal investigation and discovered the embezzlement. The culprit was fired, but no criminal proceedings were initiated. Tyson Investments preferred to settle the matter quietly so as not to lose its reputation. Grandma, Nora looked at me seriously. It was Dad. I'm sure of it. That's why we moved so suddenly. That's why he chose a small town away from Portland. I was silent, digesting the information. It was all coming together. Running away, a new job with a ridiculous salary, plans to take over my house. Hugo needed a place to wait for things to settle down. And he chose me, a lonely, gullible old woman who would do anything for her family. I also found this. Nora opened another tab. It was a picture from a social network, an office party at Tyson Investments. In it, Hugo was standing next to a short, overweight man with glasses. That man is Robert Jenkins. Dad had mentioned his name in phone conversations. He was his assistant at the company. He seems to know about the shenanigans, but he's afraid to talk. Nora, I took her hand. It's dangerous, what you're doing. If your father finds out, I know, she nodded. But I had to do something. I can't watch him use you. The way he manipulates Mom. How he turns Tristan into a copy of himself. In that moment, I saw her not just as a child, but as an ally. Smart, determined, willing to fight for justice. We have to be careful, I said. Your father mustn't suspect anything until we have enough evidence. What are you going to do? Consult a lawyer for starters. I squeezed her hand. Make sure my house is secure, and then we'll figure out how to use this information. Nora nodded, closing the laptop. I'm with you, Grandma, no matter what happens. In that moment, looking into her determined eyes, I realized I was no longer alone in my struggle. I had an ally. Even though it was just a 15-year-old girl, her support gave me the strength I had been missing for the past few months. That evening, as everyone gathered for dinner, I watched Hugo with new eyes. I could see the calculation behind his confident smile, the falseness behind his friendliness, the emptiness behind his generous promises. He talked about his first day at his new job, how he'd impressed his bosses with his ideas, how all his colleagues already recognized his authority. Fiona looked at him with adoration, Tristan with admiration. Only Nora and I exchanged understanding glances, knowing the truth. By the way, Thelma, Hugo sipped wine from his glass. I've been thinking about the future. Your future, to be exact. Oh, yeah? I tried to keep my voice neutral. Yeah. At your age, it's time to start thinking about who gets the house after. He made a vague gesture with his hand. Not that I want you to go soon, but we're all mortal. Fiona elbowed him, but not too forcefully. Hugo, not now. When, darling? He raised his eyebrows. It's an important question. Thelma lives alone in such a big house. Anything could happen. A heart attack like Harold's, or a fall on a slippery floor. At her age, a broken hip is practically a death sentence. I stared at him, not believing my ears. He was literally talking about my death over the dinner I'd made. In the house he was going to take away from me. I think I'm well enough to manage my own property, I said calmly. Of course you are! He threw up his hands theatrically. I'm just taking care of you. We all do. Right, Fiona? Of course, Mom. She took my hand. We want you to have peace of mind about your future, and the future of the home you love so much. I looked at my daughter, trying to see if she really believed what she was saying or if she was just playing along with her husband. But her eyes were sincere. She really thought she cared about me. I'll think about it, I said, releasing her hand. For now, let's just have dinner. Hugo nodded, clearly satisfied that he'd planted the seed. He didn't know that I'd already seen right through him, that his plan had been discovered, that I had an ally. Harry Weston looked exactly as I remembered him, a short man with attentive eyes and a neat gray beard. His office on the second floor of a building in downtown Decorah breathed reliability. Dark furniture, bookcases of legal volumes, diplomas on the walls. Mrs. Harrison. He shook my hand and pointed to the chair across from his desk. It's good to see you. Florence tells me you have some serious business with me. Yes, Harry, very serious. I sank into the chair, clutching my bag in my lap. I need legal advice and complete confidentiality. He nodded and pulled out a notepad. Of course. Anything you say stays between us. I told him about my situation, about Hugo, about his plans for my house, about the conversation I'd overheard and the information Nora had found. Harry listened without interrupting, making occasional notes in his notebook. So, you're afraid that your son-in-law might somehow take over your house, he summarized when I was done. Is that right? Yes. He'd already hinted that I should think about a will. Harry leaned back in his chair, tapping his pen on the table. Well, let's get this straight. You own the house outright, right? No co-borrowers, no co-owners? Yes, I'm the sole owner. That's fine. In that case, no one can claim your property without your consent. Even if Hugo convinces you to make a will in your daughter's favor, it won't take effect until after your death. As long as you're alive, the house is yours. And if he tries to, I hesitated to voice my fears. Trick you? Make you sign the deed of gift? Harry nodded understandingly. It happens, unfortunately. That's why I recommend the following. We'll draw up a document in which you declare that all future transactions with your property must take place only in my presence, or with Notary Johnson's certification. I know him personally. He's a decent man. I felt some of the weight fall from my shoulders. At least my house was safe. Thank you, Harry. That's really comforting. But that's only half the problem. He leaned forward. You said your son-in-law might be involved in financial fraud at his former job. If that's true and you have proof, that's powerful leverage. The only circumstantial evidence I have is a newspaper article that doesn't name names and an overheard conversation. That's not enough. Harry shook his head. We need something concrete. You mentioned one Robert Jenkins who might have been an accomplice? Yes, he was Hugo's assistant at Tyson Investments. Nora found his picture on social media. Harry tapped his pen on the table. It might be worth contacting this Jenkins guy. If Hugo really is involved in the shenanigans, and Jenkins knows about it, he could be useful. But how do I find him? I'll leave that to me, Harry smiled. I have an acquaintance in Portland who can help with that. In the meantime, he handed me a business card. Here's my personal number. Call me anytime if the situation escalates. I left the office feeling like I was finally taking action instead of just going with the flow. I now had a plan and professional support. When I returned home, I found Hugo in the living room. He was lying on the couch watching TV and eating chips straight out of the bag, dropping crumbs on my carpet. Oh, Thelma, you're back. He didn't even turn his head. Can you make me a sandwich? I'm starving. Normally, I would have gone to the kitchen in silence, but something was different today. Maybe talking to Harry gave me confidence. Or maybe I'm just tired of being a doormat. No, Hugo, I won't, I said calmly, taking off my coat. There's everything you need in the kitchen. You can make your own sandwich. He looked up from the screen and stared at me as if the kitchen table had spoken. I'm sorry, what? I said I'm not making you a sandwich, I repeated in the same calm tone. I just got back from the city and I want to rest. Hugo sat down, setting aside the bag of chips. Thelma, are you okay? His voice sounded not worried, but annoyed. That doesn't sound like you. I'm perfectly fine. I walked into the kitchen, feeling my heart pounding. I was just a little tired. He followed me, stopping in the doorway. Where have you been? In the city. I pulled a cup out of the cupboard. Meeting a friend. Florence. There was a suspicious note in his voice. You two have been seeing a lot of each other lately. We've been friends for 40 years, Hugo. It's only natural that we see each other a lot. He watched me make tea, his eyes narrowed. Something in my behavior alarmed him, but he couldn't figure out what it was. The next few days passed in a strange standoff. I no longer rushed to fulfill Hugo's every request. When he asked me to wash his shirts, I politely explained that the washing machine was at his disposal. When he commanded that I cook his favorite meal, I suggested he do the cooking himself. Fiona was confused by my new behavior. Mom, what's going on? She asked when it was just the two of us in the kitchen. Hugo says you've gotten kind of weird. Weird? I raised my eyebrows. Because I don't want to be a servant in my own house? No one's asking you to be a maid. She splashed her hands. It's just, well, you've always taken care of us. Cooking, cleaning, and now all of a sudden you're not. Care shouldn't be one-sided, Fiona. I tried to get through to her. I'd be happy to help you if you'd help me. Sharing responsibilities is normal in a family. She looked at me with a puzzled expression, as if she didn't understand the simple things. That night I got a message from Harry Weston. Found Jenkins. He's agreed to talk to you tomorrow at 2, Joseph's Cafe. My heart beat faster. At last I could get direct proof of Hugo's machinations. All I had to do was figure out how to get out of the house without arousing suspicion. Help came unexpectedly. At breakfast, Nora announced, Grandma, remember you promised to take me to the art gallery? There's a new exhibition there. Why don't we go tomorrow? I understood her game. Sure, darling. How about 2 o'clock? Great! She was so excited. I've been wanting to see the work of local artists for so long. Hugo, absorbed in his phone, didn't pay any attention to our conversation. Fiona just nodded, happy that Nora and I had found something to do together. The next day, my granddaughter and I did go into town, but we split up at the bus stop. I'm going to the library, Nora said. Meet me here at 4? It's a deal, I squeezed her hand. Be careful. Robert Jenkins was a short, overweight man with balding hair and sad eyes behind glasses. He was fidgeting nervously with his napkin as I approached his table in the back of the cafe. Mr. Jenkins? I held out my hand. Thelma Harrison, thank you for agreeing to meet me. You're welcome. He shook my hand with a languid handshake. Mr. Weston said you wanted to talk about Hugo Newman. Yes, I sat down across from him. He's my brother-in-law, and I have reason to believe that he was involved in financial fraud at Tyson Investments. Jenkins flinched and looked around, as if he was afraid we were being overheard. Yeah, I don't know what you want to hear, Mrs. Harrison. It was a long time ago, and I prefer not to remember that period. Mr. Jenkins, I leaned forward. Hugo lives in my house. He's manipulating my daughter and my grandchildren, and he plans to take over my property. I need the truth. He was silent for a long time, fiddling with his cup of cold coffee. You have no idea what he's capable of, he finally said quietly. If he finds out I've been talking to you, he won't, he said quietly. He won't, I assured him. I won't tell anyone about this meeting. Jenkins took a deep breath. Good. Yes, Hugo was indeed running a scam at Tyson. He set up a shell investment company and transferred clients' money there. About $500,000 in total. And you knew about this? Not right away. He shook his head. I was his assistant doing paperwork. I noticed discrepancies in the reports, but Hugo explained that it was a new investment strategy. I believed it, or wanted to. He was my boss, you know. I nodded without interrupting. When it all came out, I almost got fired along with him. The only thing that saved me was that I agreed to cooperate with the internal investigation. Proved that I was just an enforcer, didn't know about the criminal scheme. But you didn't go to the police? Tyson didn't want publicity. He grinned bitterly. A scandal could undermine the trust of the clients, so everything was decided internally. Hugo was fired, forced to return some of the money and sign a non-disclosure agreement. In exchange, the company didn't press charges. Do you have any proof? I asked. Documents, tapes of conversations? Jenkins was silent for a moment, then pulled a flash drive out of his jacket pocket. Here, he placed it on the table. These are copies of some of the documents I've kept just in case. Transfer reports, letters from Hugo with instructions, screenshots of bank transactions. I shouldn't have kept any of this, but insurance, you know? I took the flash drive, feeling my fingers shake. Thank you, Mr. Jenkins. This is very important to me. Be careful, he warned me. Hugo isn't the kind of man who loses with dignity. When he was fired, he threatened me. Said if I said one word, I'd be sorry. I'll be careful, I promised, and thanks again. I woke up the next morning with a firm decision to end this confrontation. No more half measures and innuendo. It was time for direct action. Harry Weston supported my plan. Ultimatum is the only language these people understand, he said when I called him. You have the proof. The house is legally protected. Now you need to push. I'm afraid for my daughter and my grandchildren. Hugo is unpredictable. That's why we need to act decisively. The longer you stall, the more time he has to come up with countermeasures. I chose a time when Fiona had gone to work and the kids had gone to school. Hugo was sitting in the living room, watching the news on his tablet. We need to talk. I stood in front of him, arms crossed over my chest. I'm busy. He didn't even look up. It's important, Hugo. He set the clipboard aside slowly, looking at me with ill-concealed distaste. If you're talking about us moving out again, this conversation is over. No, the conversation is just beginning. I pulled a flash drive out of my pocket and placed it on the table in front of him. These are copies of documents from Tyson Investments, reports of money transfers to a shell company, letters with your instructions, bank statements, a complete set of evidence of your machinations. Hugo turned pale. He stared at the flash drive as if it were a poisonous snake. Where did you get that? His voice dropped to a whisper. It doesn't matter. What matters is that I have the originals in a safe place. And if anything happens to that flash drive, the copies will end up with the police. He rose slowly from the couch. His eyes darkened with rage. Are you blackmailing me? No, Hugo. I'm protecting my home and my family from you. We stood across from each other like two duelists before a decisive shot. He was taller than me, younger, stronger, but in that moment I felt invincible. What do you want? He finally hissed. The same thing I wanted before. For you to move out, all four of you, within 3 days. That's impossible. He splashed his hands. Where are we going to find a place to live in 3 days? Not my problem. 3 days, Hugo, or Sheriff Coltrane will have that information. Hugo paced the room, tugging at his hair. His composure was snapping at the seams. You don't know what you're doing, Thelma. You're going to destroy a family. Your own family. No, Hugo. You ruined my family when you decided to use me and my house for your schemes. When you turned my daughter into an obedient puppet. When you taught my grandson to despise his elders. He turned sharply toward me. Fiona won't believe you. Not even if you show her those documents. She's on my side. She might be, but Sheriff Coltrane will, and the judge will, and then you'll have to explain to Fiona why you're out of work again and why you're facing a lawsuit. He looked at me with hatred. In his eyes, he wanted to hit me, to destroy me, but something was holding him back. Maybe it was fear of the consequences. Okay, he finally said. We'll move out, but not in 3 days. We need at least a week. 5 days. I pretended to compromise. No more. 5 days. He nodded, looking past me. But be warned, Thelma. You're going to regret this. You don't know what you've done. Threats won't work, Hugo. I have evidence against you, and a lawyer who knows the situation. If anything happens to me, those documents will still end up at the police station. I turned and walked out of the room, feeling his eyes on my back. My heart was pounding like crazy, but I didn't let myself show fear. Only when my bedroom door closed behind me did I let myself exhale and sink down onto the bed, shaking with my whole body. I had done it. I had won the battle. But at what cost? When Fiona returned from work, Hugo was already waiting for her. I could hear their muffled voices from the living room, but I couldn't make out the words. Then there was Fiona's crying and Hugo's soothing voice. He was going ahead with his plan to turn my daughter against me. At dinner, the atmosphere was so tense that the air seemed to tingle. Fiona wouldn't look in my direction, her eyes red with tears. Tristan glared at me with angry looks. Apparently, he'd already been told Hugo's version of events. Only Nora watched with an unreadable expression. We have news. Hugo announced as everyone sat down at the table. We're moving. What? Where? Tristan looked away from his phone. To Redwood. I got a job offer there. It's a lot better than the one I got here. But, my school, my friends, Tristan mumbled, confused. Redwood has great schools. Hugo put his hand on his son's shoulder. You'll make new friends in no time. Besides, we don't have a choice. Grandma's kicking us out. All eyes turned to me. Tristan's eyes were filled with indignation, Fiona's with pain and incomprehension. Nora just stared, waiting for my answer. I'm not kicking you out, I said calmly. I just think it's time for you to live on your own, like a normal family. But why now? Fiona couldn't take it anymore. Why all of a sudden? Because your mother decided she didn't need us anymore, Hugo interrupted, not letting me answer. Apparently, we'd become a burden to her. That's not true. Fiona, can we talk privately after dinner? I can explain. Explain what? Hugo grinned. How you've been poking around my affairs. How you hired a private detective to follow me. A private investigator? I couldn't believe such a lie. Hugo, why are you making this up? I'm making it up? He raised his voice. Who was meeting with my former colleague? Who was asking him for information about me? Fiona looked at me with eyes widened with shock. Mom, is it true? You've been following Hugo? I realized I was trapped. If I admitted I'd been seeing Jenkins, I'd confirm Hugo's story. If I denied it, I'd be lying. I did meet with Mr. Jenkins, I finally said. But I didn't hire any detectives. I just wanted to know the truth about why you moved so suddenly from Portland. See? Hugo turned to Fiona. She doesn't trust us, spying on us, digging into our past. Why, Mom? There was resentment in Fiona's voice. Couldn't you just ask? I did, many times, but I never got an honest answer. And now you got one? Hugo looked at me with challenge. Does it get easier? Now that you've ruined our lives with your suspicions? I could have told you everything. About his machinations, about the $500,000 he'd stolen, about how he planned to take over my house. But I looked at the children, the frightened Nora, the angry Tristan, and I couldn't. They didn't deserve such a shock. I didn't want to hurt anyone. I just wanted to protect my home and my family. From who? From us? Fiona jumped up from the table. We are your family, Mom. The only one you have. Fiona, please, let's just talk calmly. What is there to talk about? You've made up your mind. You're kicking us out. Okay, fine. We'll leave. But don't expect things to stay the same after that. She ran from the table. Hugo followed her. Tristan gave me a look of contempt and left too. Nora and I were left alone in the dining room. The next 5 days were like hostilities. Hugo was a flurry of activity, calling, making arrangements, organizing the move. Fiona packed her things, crying and accusing me of all sins. Tristan shut himself in his room, only coming out to eat. He completely ignored my existence. Hugo worked on Fiona and Tristan methodically, like a skilled manipulator. I heard scraps of his conversations with his daughter. She's always been against me. She's jealous of our happiness. She wants to control you. With Tristan, he was even more blunt. Your grandmother is out of her mind. She thinks only of herself. She doesn't care about our family. I tried not to react to the provocations, but every word hit me where it hurt. It was especially painful to see Fiona, my only daughter, growing more and more distant from me. She avoided being alone with me, answering one-wordedly if I tried to speak. Only Nora remained my quiet ally. She helped me with household chores, talked to me when no one else could hear, and once even left a note on my pillow. Everything will be okay. I'm with you. On the 5th day, early in the morning, a moving truck stopped at the gate of the house. The same one that had brought their belongings in October. Now it was hauling them away. Hugo was supervising the loading, giving commands to the movers. His face was stony as he walked past me. Fiona was fussing, checking to see if they'd forgotten anything. Tristan sat in the car, staring at his phone. Nora was the only one helping everyone and taking the time to come over to me. Grandma, she said softly so no one would hear. We're going to Redwood. It's 2 hours from here. I got the address, just in case. Thanks, honey. Be careful. And remember, my house is always open to you. When all the things were loaded, It was time to say goodbye. Hugo gave me a cold nod and got into the car. Tristan didn't even come out to say goodbye. Fiona stood on the doorstep, shuffling awkwardly from foot to foot. Well, she didn't look me in the eye. We're leaving. Fiona, I never meant to hurt you. Everything I've done. Don't, Mom. She held up her hand, stopping me. I don't want to discuss this now. Maybe later when things have calmed down. Of course. I nodded, swallowing back my tears. Whatever you say. She finally looked up at me, and I could see the hurt in her eyes, but also the confusion. Part of her maybe was realizing that it wasn't as simple as Hugo imagined. Take care of yourself, Mom, she said, and hugged me awkwardly. The hug was short, formal. I'll call you when we're settled. I'll be waiting. I nodded, knowing that call might never happen. Nora hugged me tightly, sincerely, whispering in my ear, I'll text you as soon as I can. Then she ran to the car where the others were waiting for her. I stood on the porch, watching Hugo's SUV pull out of the yard, followed by the truck with their stuff. As the cars disappeared around the corner, I slowly walked back into the house. My house that belonged only to me again. It was quiet inside. Too quiet after months of constant noise. I walked through the rooms, noting the signs of Fiona's family's presence. The empty shelves where gaudy figurines stood, the wall without Hugo's huge TV, the stains left by Tristan on the carpet. Nora's room was especially empty. She'd taken all her drawings away, leaving only bare walls. I returned to the living room and sat down in my old wicker chair, which had once again taken its place of honor by the fireplace. Victory should have brought relief, but instead I felt only bitterness. I had defended my home, but I had lost my family. In the silence of the house, I allowed myself to cry. For the first time in a while, tears streamed down my cheeks, and I didn't try to hold them back. I mourned not only the breakup with my daughter, but also the fact that there had never been any real intimacy between us. Even before Hugo came along, Fiona had always kept her distance, always looking to others for approval. The ringing of the phone snapped me out of my gloomy thoughts. It was Florence. How are you? She asked without preamble. Did they leave? Yes, I wiped away my tears. Just now. And how do you feel? Empty. Like I'd won the battle but lost the war. Thelma. Florence's voice became serious. You did the right thing. That man used you. He wouldn't stop until he had your house. I know, but Fiona, she still doesn't get it. She thinks I kicked them out of spite. Give her time, Florence suggested. When she's away from Hugo's influence, maybe she'll start to see things more clearly. I hope you're right. In the meantime, I'm alone again. Don't be silly, Florence snorted. You have me, and other friends. And Nora, that girl, is clearly on your side. She was right. I had support. I wasn't completely alone. And yet, looking at the empty rooms where my family had once lived, I couldn't help but feel a sense of loss. In the evening, as I was making dinner just for myself, the first letter from Nora arrived. Grandma, we've made it. The apartment is small, but it's okay. Dad is still mad. Mom is crying. Tristan blames you for everything. I miss you. Write me how you're doing. I wrote back, trying to sound upbeat and optimistic. I didn't want Nora to worry about me anymore. I assured her that everything was fine, that she could always come visit me whenever she wanted. Before I went to bed, I went out on the veranda and looked up at the starry sky. Same view as always, but for some reason it seemed different. Maybe because I was looking at it with different eyes now. The eyes of someone who had been through a battle and survived, but didn't come out of it unscathed. I had protected my home. My home was mine again. But the price of that victory was high. And yet, as I thought back to Hugo's overheard conversation, his plans for my property, his disparaging words about me, I knew I had done the right thing. You can't let people take advantage of you, even if those people are your family.